My name is Ayaan Zeinab Adam, and I am a senior director at the Africa Finance Corporation and the CEO of AFC Capital Partners. AFC Capital Partners is an asset management subsidiary of AFC. We incorporated this company in Mauritius, July of 2021, and our main objective is to offer de-risk products to institutional investors such as pension funds in Africa and globally. And the idea is to close not only the infrastructure gap that currently exists in the Africa side, $2.3 trillion worth of infrastructure, and even much more when you look at the industrial gap, but also to ensure that climate change parameters are integrated in how we look at infrastructure. And our first product is the Infrastructure Climate Resilient Fund, which we're raising up to 750 million for. Our strategy in 2022 is to complete a first close for the Infrastructure Climate Resilient Fund. And this is the first effort that any African entity that is focused on infrastructure and industry is going to tackle the issue of the impacts of climate change in our infrastructure. What do we mean by that? We mean that AFC, as you know, we have a proven track record of 15 years of developing, constructing, and operating infrastructure in various sectors, transport and logistics, the entire value chain. We also are very involved in the power side. We're also highly involved in natural resources and mining and minerals. We also work very closely in hardcore telecom infrastructure such as cable. One of our landmark projects, which we already sold, is Main One, which links Portugal to Ghana and Nigeria. In the transport sector, we did quite a lot, including in Gabon, where we developed a port and industrial park. We invested in a mining operation, but we put together a sustainable timber project, which is net zero, that actually moved the country to, instead of sending out raw material, is that we are actually involved in processing some of these materials in the country, which has translated in major economic activity. But we have always used our own balance sheet. This is the first time that we are confident to offer our track record integrated with a climate consideration into the institutional investors. So we've launched the Infrastructure Climate Resilient Fund, which we are hoping to raise between 500 and 700 million dollars. It's a pan-African fund that looks at 20 core countries, and the objective for us this year is to achieve a first close of that fund, so that we can close the gap and also integrate physical climate risks in how we approach infrastructure in Africa. We all know that Africa hasn't contributed much to the current stock of emissions, but we're suffering the consequences. We've seen what happened to the port in Durban and in other places. There is significant weather patterns, there is flooding that's happening, there is a sea rise that's affecting not just the African continent, but the islands that are in the Indian Ocean rim. So this is a very important product. We do have a blended structure that protects the capital and also de-risks to ensure that the pension funds are able to invest, and that it acts like as a capital preservation, but also as a return enhancer. So we are looking forward to ensuring that all the pension funds that are present in PIA really look deeply at this product. It's a highly differentiated product. It enables them to get into infrastructure in a risk-adjusted manner while getting very respectable returns. Because it's very important to note what is happening in globally. All other regions, the pension funds are highly organizing in supporting the infrastructure asset class. In Africa, what we have is a huge infrastructure gap of $2.3 trillion. And we know that we have when you add our pension industry and our sovereign wealth fund and others, we have a sizable of estimated at $2 trillion worth of assets. So it's very important we look at how do we bring that into the infrastructure asset class, because AFC is about using African capital to do the things that others will not help us to do. It's so important to own this infrastructure gap and to get the regulators, the policymakers, and the pension industry, the pension funds to be here to meet and to discuss how do we invest in this asset class, which is critical. We cannot develop Africa without infrastructure. So the bulk of the continent still has a lot of infrastructure that requires significant amount of investment. We're not saying everything, but there are profitable pockets that are very key for the pension industry. So it's absolutely important. And as AFC, this is part of our DNA, is to ensure African money is there to support African development. Without power, without transport, without logistics, we cannot industrialize. And this is very important. We have a big continent. We have a huge workforce. All our people are very young. They will need jobs. They will need a working infrastructure. They will need a growth in the economies of Africa so that they can remain in Africa and they can contribute productively to a brighter future. So I think at AFC we like to say we are a bridge to a prosperous future, and this is part of that. This conference is part of that. So I think we would like to see more pension funds involved in this conference that is held yearly here in Mauritius. We really want to get more of African money to compare notes, to discuss. We need more participation going forward from institutional investors in Africa, pension funds, and perhaps even some of the smaller, newer ones to be present. It's very important that we get the regulators to be talking to each other, learning best practices from one another. But also it's very important for key players that have the assets that can bring the right offerings and projects to also come in. We believe this is a very important platform to make it stronger and to really create a family that really looks at this. So both the supply of these projects, but also the supply of the funding, the regulators, the policymakers coming together. We feel this is extremely important. So that's what I would like to send out to the audience. And we want to see more, a much more participation of African institutional money and African players that are highly involved in the development of infrastructure in Africa.